I'm awake. Are you?
I wonder how many miles I've fallen. It seems I'll get to the center of the earth. Curious, isn't it? And really, nothing's quite impossible.
Let's go now to our new episode of the Unfiltered Rise with me, Heidi Love.
Welcome back to my channel. We have a quartet today, myself, Ostic, Heidi Love from the Unfiltered Rise podcast, and the lovely producer Jordan. Hey, all.
Hey. Hello, hello.
This quartet does pretty well in terms of ratings, so I'm excited to see how this will do. We are going to be talking about chapter 19 from the abridged Golden Bough, Tabooed Acts. We're going to be talking about different magical practices and taboo practices involved with the interaction with strangers, strange lands, the covering of face, the eating and drinking of food, leaving the house, and isolation that many people who are in great positions of power in these cultures have to endure. Now, before we get into all of that, I had a very busy week. Ostic, I hope I don't disappoint you too much. I front-loaded this one with some of the residual issues from last week that Jordan raised, and it might be a half hour or 40 minutes before we get into the Frigerian material. So hopefully that's not too upsetting. I'll revert back to the format that we've been doing in the past month or so. And then on the other side of that, there might be some conversation about Ovid and the metamorphosis and whatever happened in 2020. But I don't think we're going to get to that today. I didn't really have a chance to refine it as much as I would have liked. But going from this title card, I don't know, Heidi, if you had a chance to check out recent installments, or if either of you got to watch last time, but we've had this kind of protracted conversation about the similarities between shamans and outer space adventurers. I've been calling them galactic shamans. I kind of like that. There's probably a better way to talk about this phenomenon. And I wanted to perhaps look at confirmation and a deeper understanding of that. Here I have this COVID shaman. I can't remember where she was from. She was on the world stage, I think in Europe, and she did this routine where she spit into her hands and like she coughed in the face of like health officials, and it was like, what is going on here during the middle of the pandemic? What it may have in what galactic shamans may have in common with parrots, and also this incredible synchronicity that happened on the 25th anniversary of the moon landing with this comet that slammed into Jupiter. Heidi is roughly my age. I don't know if you recall this. It was I could recall the existential dread. Do you remember when this happened in 1994?
I think that there's always so much end of the world nonsense for Utah that it may have bypassed me, but I do remember the comet situation, not so much Jupiter. But yes,
right.
Comet.
We're gonna spiral on that a little bit. Also, Jordan had some questions about the connection between W.H. Auden and the Tavistock Institute. I'm not saying that I completely exhausted my search, but I came up relatively empty-handed, though I think I understand why she thought there was some connection between Auden and the Tavistock Institute. And this led to a research dig into the foundations of Tavistock, the connections to Freud and Jung, and then this incredibly rare study put forward by the Kettering Institute that I think we all need to take a look at some point. I tried to find a copy of it on Amazon. It was like $2,000, although it is on Internet Archive. We're going to talk a little bit about that today. And this continuing conversation about the numinosity of numbers. Specifically, I wanted to do a little bit of a closer examination of the numbers 5 and 11, specifically related to the Saturn V rocket and Apollo 11. So these are some of the loose ends I wanted to tie up, and hopefully Ostic finds them interesting. Do you think you're going to find any of this interesting, Ostic?
Yeah, sure. I'm here for the ride. I'm a ride or die.
Okay. All right. So I quite enjoy doing this quote at the beginning. I feel like it sets the stage for some of the ongoing themes in our podcast. I figured one of the ladies should read it because it's a nice break from my voice. Heidi or Jordan, who wants dibs?
I'm far away from where my computer is, so maybe
Oh.
Jordan, because I can't see good.
Sure. I was gonna say we should have the guest, but yeah, I can do it.
It's a little bit of a long quote, but I think it'll precipitate an interesting conversation about what motivates this project. So this is from C.J. Jung's Modern Man in Search of a Soul. Probably the second or third time that I've gone through it. I listened to it again on Audible this week. It's probably, in my opinion, one of his best works in terms of it making his ideas popular to like a larger audience, but at the same time not compromising any of its rigor. And I felt like if I were to recommend a text for someone getting into Carl Jung, it might be this one. This or maybe The Undiscovered Self. So I don't know if anybody else on this panel would agree, but I feel like this might be a good place for people to start. So, Jordan, if you wouldn't mind, would you read this passage from page 137?
Of course, yeah, I would not recommend starting with Aeon.
No, I'm actually listening to that now on Everand.
Nice.
So that I've switched from Audible. I hit my 50-hour goal, so I'm going to try something else now.
As may be seen, I attribute a positive value to all religions. In their symbolism, I recognize those figures which I have met within the dreams and fantasies of my patients. In their moral teachings, I see efforts that are the same as or similar to those made by my patients. When, guided by their own insight or inspiration, they seek the right way of dealing with the forces of the inner life. Ceremonial, ritual, initiation rites, and ascetic practices in all their forms and variations interest me profoundly as so many techniques for bringing about a proper relation to these forces. I likewise attribute a positive value to biology and to the empiricism of natural science in general, in which I see a Herculean attempt to understand the human psyche by approaching it from the outer world. I regard the Gnostic religions as an equally prodigious undertaking in the opposite direction, as an attempt to draw knowledge of the cosmos from within. In my picture of the world, there's a vast outer realm and an equally vast inner realm. Between these two stands man, facing now one and now the other, and according to his mood or disposition, taking the one for the absolute truth by denying or sacrificing the other.
Well done. Thank you very much, Jordan. So the reason why I included this passage, and there's a lot more to it than the point that I would make, and perhaps everybody else on this panel will have something to say that I will not cover in this. When my particular focus is trying to understand the Apollo missions from a Jungian perspective. And I think what's been kind of difficult about that is the treatment of the missions. Are we supposed to treat them as historical events? Are we supposed to treat them as sequences in a dream? Are we supposed to treat them as a type of a pictorial religion? And what I think is kind of interesting, I'm not exactly sure what the answer is there, and perhaps all three collapse into the same answer. They're all perhaps maybe it doesn't really matter what we call it and what they are, or maybe there's a different type of interpretation depending on the level of interpretation that we're doing. But the reason why I included this passage is that Jung has really no problem analyzing religious movements through the archetypal lens, and how he goes about applying that to Gnosticism or mainline Christianity, I think will be illustrative for us understanding Apollo 11 through 17 and what happened before and what happened after. So it's really the only point that I'm making there, is that this methodology is properly applied to this movement. So why could we not do it in this particular scientific historical tradition that I've preoccupied myself with? So that's the main thing I wanted to talk about in regards to this quote. Did anything jump out to anybody else? Yeah,
Uh,
Ostic.
I'll say one thing that jumped out to me was this realization that yet again he's hammering the point home that consciousness is what makes the world. Because if we are not there to observe the world, it's meaningless. But the way, as soon as we enter the world with our ideas, we animate the world with possibilities and everything. So he talks about. So that's why I think the inner world and outer world, they hold equal significance, because without us, that's it's nothing there. It's just randomness. Our presence, it actually intensifies those energies that's actually and potentialities within those objects of the external world. That's just a very normal idea.
And that might be true, and this might illustrate perhaps a difference in Jungian interpretation. I mean, the thing for me as I get deeper into this, and I think Heidi will probably have something to say about this since she's gone so deep into Carl Jung, is that the deeper I go into Jung, the more irrational, erratic aspects of reality, the seems to be the thing that's primal. And I'm tempted to think about reality as being entirely psychic and mental, and that whatever we think is objective in a rationalistic or a naturalistic perspective is an illusion. So, like our dream consciousness or the chaotic nature of reality is actually more primal and relates to the facticity of the world. So, when I say that, it may be true that when we train our consciousness on it, there's this activation of this archetypal mix within us. But it almost seems to me that the entire world is psychological, is and I guess it raises the interesting question of, well, then who's the subject? And we get into the metaphysical understanding of God for Jung. And I think what I've been able to deduce from his works on synchronicity is that he's a type of panentheist, not a pantheist, but a panentheist, that God is somehow working through the matter, and that's why we see the archetypal display there. So, and that would potentially relate to the work that he did with Polly. So I'm not saying that it's completely meaning. I'm not trying to put down your perspective, because I think there are a lot of Jungians who would share your view. I'm just not. I think it's. I think that there is a psychological dimension to matter that is independent of the human individual. But I don't know if Heidi wants to say something about this.
Sure. I think the importance too here is the fact that he is delving into this information and talking about basically energy, right? The production, who is harnessing the energy created by all of us in the psychotherapy and psychoanalysis and all of the psychiatric pieces. We have to step back and go, okay, they know this, and many people don't, because they don't want you to know this.
Right.
So I think that's super important. And I think as he falls down the rabbit hole, which this photo ultimately reminds me of,
That's
right?
interesting.
It's going deeper, deeper. And of course, he's losing reality. We all feel that way as we do this. And everyone does. Look at what happened to Nietzsche. Look at what happens to all of these people that go so deep. Tesla, you could go on, but they lose a piece of grounding, I would say, often. And then they start to get freaked out. There's no other way to say it. Yeah. I mean,
That's an
I
interesting
think,
point. Yeah.
yeah, we have to ground ourselves for sure.
Well, it seems like one of the ways that Jung grounds himself is that he had the ability to compartmentalize a lot of these deeper metaphysical questions. There is so much throughout Jung is kind of a mockery and a dismissal of philosophers in general, despite so much of what Jung is talking about originates from philosophy. I mean, we see the fingerprints of Kant and Schopenhauer and Nietzsche, and some would even argue Hegel throughout all of Jung. But at the same time, he has a lot of acerbic things to say about philosophers in general. I find that interesting that Jung was kind of able to put the brakes on that. And perhaps he found some sort of grounding in his occult practices. Jordan, you're the one who read this. Have you had time to process it?
Um, I had a few thoughts, but kind of building off of the direction you guys already took it in. It reminds me too of psychological types, and I could be misremembering where I'm pulling this from, right? There's so much. But my kind of understanding of the cognitive functions, if you will, is that they all have their place. They all have their strengths. They all have circumstances in which they are the ideal tool in the toolbox to deploy. And through the individuation process, like you kind of level up the ones that are not necessarily your comfort zone. And I think that applies here. Like taking it from the biology lens can yield value, taking it from the philosophy lens can yield value. So you're talking about this compartmentalization, Luke. I think it also kind of maps over nicely with his theory of the psyche, or not the personality, more the
Yeah.
personality. I might be, I do not have a PhD in this, so I could certainly be
Neither do
conflating
I.
terms. That's where I wanted to take it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I find
Oh,
it
cool.
interesting also
Sure.
that Steiner in anthroposophy forces people to do other things other than just study. He's very clear about this, and including, dance and like eurythmy and all this stuff. And there's a reason, because he knows you can, get that pressure too tight on the pot. So
I've not gone deep into Steiner, but I encountered some material earlier this week that he was like fully aware of the shadow side of every human, but was anti Jung's perspective that we need to integrate the shadow. I don't know if
yeah.
you can speak to that at all. And it sounds like
Well,
you know much more about Steiner than in that I think Jung would have thought he was one-sided because of that.
Steiner definitely had, he's very, I mean, he left Theosophy for the whole reasoning that he was bucking against the system of other people's thoughts towards that. And he was much more in the Christian view, though a lot of his workings are not Christian. I mean, it gets weird. So we look at it and say, take it with a grain of salt. He's trying to stay in his lane, basically, as a quote unquote Christian. And that's why he made, anthroposophy instead of, the knowing of man. And I mean, I'm no PhD on any of this. I just like to study some stuff. And Steiner was one, especially with the eighth sphere. I do think he touches on things just a little bit here and there about darkness, but he has a more ability to blame it on things that exist around us. So
Interesting. We'll have to do a deep dive on that one day.
yes.
All right. So let's go to the next slide, because we could just talk forever about this quote. I wanted to talk a little bit about shamanic astronauts. Okay. So we'll just go around to these pictures. So in previous installments, we looked at here next to Neil on the 25th anniversary is a photo from Man and His Symbols of a shaman dressed up as a bird. And it seemed, whether it's synchronous, intentional, or this is just the alchemical churning of reality, it seems like something is repeating this process all over again. And I pointed out through our examination of the bunny imagery associated with the astronauts, the Snoopy imagery that is kind of like almost like a dog totem or whatever that was associated with the Apollo astronauts, that there was something kind of shamanic to what they were doing, going to this upper realm, bringing back knowledge, having these ecstatic experiences, talking about the unification with mankind and God himself. There's a lot one could say about the shamanic dimension of outer space travel. And I sent this video to our group chat. What's his name? Rob? What's his name? He was doing the mystery from Collative Learning. This guy, he did a great little 13-minute video on the meaning of the eyeball in 2001, and it prompted my memory of the helmets that Kubrick used in 2001, where it's very clear that he created some sort of animalistic headdress for the astronauts. You can see here they look like it looks like a bird head or a parrot, or some individuals say when the different color helmets look like different animals, like the green one was, when the light reflects off the visor, may make one resemble a crocodile or something to this nature. So perhaps Kubrick picked up on the shamanic thread that we've been talking about here, or maybe this is one of those just divine coincidences. But something else that prompted me to think a little bit deeper about this, and I remember when this happened in '94 during the 25th anniversary of the moon landing. Neil, Mike, all the surviving Apollo 11 astronauts, they were all alive at that time. That's redundant for me to say that, but they met, and Bill Clinton gave this big introduction, and Neil started off this very brief speech, and he said, and it's kind of caused a lot of attention in certain circles. But he said, "Thank you, Mr. Vice President, Mr. President, members of Congress, fellow astronauts, ladies and gentlemen. Wilbur Wright once noted that the only bird that could talk was the parrot, and he didn't fly very well. So I'll be brief. This week, America has been recalling the Apollo program and reliving the memories of those in which so many of us here, colleagues here in the first rows, were immersed. Our old astrogeology mentor, Gene Shoemaker, even called in one of his comets to mark the occasion with spectacular Jovian fireworks, and reminding us once again of the power and consequence of celestial extracurricular activities." There's a lot more from this speech I could pull from. It's about, I think it's about a 5-minute speech. But the line that a lot of people get hung up with is like, he's analogizing the astronauts to birds, right? And so that kind of feeds into this idea that there's something shamanic going on there. But you could, and people kind of nervously laughed in the audience. Like, they're like, that's kind of a funny joke, but you could tell they perhaps didn't really get what he was saying. Like, what are you trying to, because if you read it one way, he's saying that, well, because I fly well, I'm going to be a bird that doesn't speak well. So I'm going to be brief. Okay. And the other, or you could have a brief speech because you don't want to speak too long. How about you're not a good flyer? So I'm not gonna get into all of that, okay? But I found that to be very interesting that he himself analogizes he and his fellow astronauts as a bird. So, but what caught my eye also, I was like, what is this? It's, we've for Heidi's podcast and in our discussion, we've talked about Jupiter. Who is Gene Shoemaker? What are these Jovian fireworks? And that led to a pretty interesting discovery. So I want to go to that, but before I do, are there any thoughts from the group here on this?
So birds are frequently used as a metaphor for the soul in a cult.
Yes,
yeah.
they are.
And then we look at the Masons and we have owls and pelicans and eagles. And, there's a lot of secret societies associated with these upper echelon people that get to be in the know. I mean, it just is what it is. So I wonder if he had a dual nature there in that speech. I don't know.
I mean, I think he's got all different sorts of levels that he's speaking on. It does seem to be masterful. I do not believe that Neil was publicly a Mason. Buzz took a Masonic flag to the moon.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that was a pretty big deal.
Yes. Yeah, but they're all members of the Alfalfa Club. And that gets interesting to ties
The
to
Alfalfa
Egypt.
Club?
Yes.
What are you talking about? What's the Alfalfa Club?
I know. Everybody's going to say it's a dinner club once a year to celebrate Robert E. Lee's birthday, but there are deeper aspects to this that no one remembers anymore because the books are gone. And there's one book that has been downloaded, and one guy does a lot of exposing on this. And I've actually seen what he uploaded on the book, and it goes back to ancient Egypt as it always does. So and birds there as well. I mean, we
Yeah.
see so many things. I mean, they literally turn them into gods. So
Oh, yeah, that's very interesting. I hadn't even thought about looking into
Quetzalcoatl
Egypt.
is
Yeah. I hadn't thought about looking at like bird-headed gods in Egypt. Was it Set that had a bird head? And isn't Set like the Egyptian version of Apollo? There's so much to look up here. Someone,
right. Yeah.
I'll let you and
I
Austin
always
talk while Jordan
derail
and I research.
everything. Sorry.
No, you're great. What do you think, Ostic?
No, I think it's you are reiterating what we had previously uncovered, and that's wonderful. Another thing that I found out was I was staring at his helmet for a long time. I thought, okay, he's a parrot. It could also be some kind of a frog head or something like that. I
Yeah.
thought about totem poles or like wearing a bear skin. If you wear a bear skin on your head, it seems like he has other eyes on his head and your face is still visible. So I thought about like the astronaut could be wearing a bear skin or something of that nature, a skin of another animal. I mean, the way he has presented that in that image, just
Bugs
that.
are huge when you're relating to entities from other places. They often refer to them as looking, like bugs. So, yeah,
Oh,
gets weird.
Yeah, I think Horus would be the analog of Apollo, an Egyptian. And I believe, yeah, so Horus Horus had a falcon head. I don't know how much Jordan wants to pull up here. But I'd like to look a little bit more about the Alfalfa Club and Horus or Ra. Jordan, what did you find on the Alfalfa Club when you pulled that up?
Oh, I mean, I doing this real time.
Yeah.
I found this article kind of interesting. I want to come back to this. They're talking about just for fun, they nominate a presidential candidate every year. Um, yeah, lots of interesting names.
Yeah, and one of them is Mitt Romney. And not only that, but people of color go to this and they're tearing down statues of Confederacy things, but yet we're celebrating Robert E. Lee's birthday every year. Okay. And don't say I did a Mason sign. I just did the okay. I gotta watch my hand. But
Intent is everything.
right, everything. But it's true. Like it's strange. Like Obama's been, all these different people that have been to celebrate this situation where it's just dinner. Okay, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
wasn't Robert E. Lee some sort of a Confederate general? Like he was.
Yeah. He was. He was.
It's strange.
And
I
Neil's
mean,
I don't.
father was a
is he a
Mason,
good?
a very known Mason, Neil Armstrong's father. So I doubt that he's not. Like he just hit it better. I don't know.
Maybe.
He's so quiet for being such
I'll
a
have to
popular
verify.
guy.
Yeah. All right. I mean, I don't even know how to talk about all this Masonic stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, my general feeling about it is the level of interpretation and interest that I have in it absorbs whatever was going on at that level. I the way I'm trying to understand it is that this is something beyond the organizations of men. This is something that is in some sense being orchestrated by God and the reality itself. But that's my personal take. Okay. So I wanted to look a little closer at Gene Shoemaker. If we go to slide 361, if that's okay with everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So this was endlessly fascinating. So he was talking about the Jovian fireworks. Okay. So what that is a reference to is on the 25th anniversary, the exact day of the Apollo 11 launch, they had this comet that was named after Gene Shoemaker called Shoemaker Levy 9, and it streamed across the sky. Supposedly, I've not dug deep enough into this to know like what could be picked up by Hubble and Galileo and what could be seen by civilian and terrestrial stuff. But supposedly, it slammed into Jupiter, causing these brown marks, I believe, on the southern pole of Jupiter. And it was all very interesting that it synchronized with the celebration of this great accomplishment. And this is who Gene Shoemaker is in the top right-hand corner. I think he wanted to be an astronaut, but because I think he had Addison's disease, it prevented him from actually walking on the moon. But as I dug deeper into this, it got more insane. Gene Shoemaker would eventually get to the moon. He just wouldn't walk on it. He is the first and only person to be buried on the moon. So he died not long. I think he died in 1997. So 3 years after the 25th anniversary of the Apollo moon landing. He died on his way to a conference, I believe, in Australia in a car accident. And there's this company, I think it's called Celestis or something like that. And one of its specialties is to do space funerals and burials. And I think he was the very first one they ever did. And he's the only person buried on the moon. I don't know if I have a lot of like interesting insight into this, but some other notable people that have been buried in space are it's like 4 or 5 of them are from like Star Trek. So you like Gene Roddenberry and his wife, Scotty was buried in space or launched into space. What was the woman's name here? The black woman that was on Star Trek, the original one. I forget her name. Arthur C. Clarke. So there was an astronaut, I believe Gordon Cooper did that as well. Nichelle Nichols she played Lieutenant Uhura from Star Trek. DeForest Kelley was Scotty. Those are the ones, and even lately they've like flown like DNA from like George Washington and Kennedy and Eisenhower into outer space. So I'm just putting this here. I think there is something supremely fascinating about this ritual that I've yet to really had an opportunity to comprehend. I think it was like late last night or 2 nights ago. I was like, wait, so the guy that they named this comet after that slammed into Jupiter on the 25th anniversary also is buried on the moon. Like, I just haven't had a chance to put this all together. So maybe I'll throw this out to you guys. I mean, there's all this like Jupiterian stuff that's associated with the Apollo 11 stuff, right? Like, I mean, not to mention that it's Zeus's eagle that touches down on the surface, right? So what does it mean that like, you know, we're witnessing this cosmic collision of Jupiter where it gets all messed up as a result of this comet?
That's a very remarkable coincidence, if I should say.
Yeah.
But like, the more you talk about it, the more I keep thinking that it's some sort of a racket or something very different from what it is being presented as. Because growing up, I used to think they're exploring space and everything, but now they're taking the DNA of George Washington. It's so intertwined with the history and the mythology of the country. So it's ringing alarm bells for me. Like every time
Do
I
they do
hear
things?
more about it.
Yeah. Do they do things like this in India?
They do that, but it's like very obvious that it's a religious thing. But now I didn't expect this in America. Let's just say that. Like I thought that they were very normal country.
No, 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 not at all. Not at all. We are incredibly abnormal.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting.
Well, yeah, it's weird. It just screams necromancy contactee to me. I mean,
Go on.
so
Tell me what you're thinking.
ah. Well, we're gonna get into names
Oh
as
yeah,
well.
because like necromancy is like it's like a thing in Mormonism, which is one
Yep.
of your specialties. Yeah, tell me what you think.
Yes. So, you know, you're giving, you get a second name. when you go through, just like any other like secret societies, including magic. And that magical name, can have some, they say, control over you if they know that. Just like how people obfuscate their birth charts or birthdays or whatever. If they're famous, they do this. But when we know we're going to talk about hair, even in voodoo, like minus Mormonism, like this is
Right.
important for other places. Like, so we're literally talking DNA.
Yes,
Um,
yes. I think you're on the right path here because this
yeah.
gets into the sympathetic magic stuff that we looked at very early on in the Golden Bough. Keep going. I want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, I just think that it's probably another form of contacting if this is possible and they have figured it out. And also charging, right? If they've looked at these people's birth charts and they have, a strong moon presence in their birth chart, I mean, are they charging the DNA for a rise, like to talk to them? You know, I mean, we know that that's not only in our culture, like, I mean, we've got all kinds of cultures that do that. Okay. So we see this, and Mormons are definitely all about definitely baptizing the dead, definitely sealing the dead, definitely making
Mm.
sure the dead are sealed to their families for time and all eternity. That's not biblical, so they got that from somewhere else. And when we see this kind of stuff, I think they know a piece clearly that we all don't know, and why Steiner talks about the eighth sphere, and why people like Jewish people talk about spirits living right here with us right now, like all over us. They're here coexisting on a different linear. He's
Mm.
concerned, he's checking it out. They say they're in the bathroom, so be careful. But don't spend too much time in there. I think that was maybe written by a woman, I don't know. Like, get out of the bathroom, honey, get off your phone. No, just kidding. And so when we see this stuff, it obviously clearly means something or has some sort of magical power, or they wouldn't do it. People always say, well, that's stupid. Magic is stupid. It's gone. I'm like, really? Well, why do they still practice it after all these years if it doesn't work?
Something that you said, Heidi, that resonated with me when you talked about the baptizing of the dead. And I wonder if this is a way to ensure like some sort of personal apotheosis, ascension process as a result of being buried, essentially buried in heaven, planted in the sky above. And I think a lot of these people think that that's don't attach like the symbolic meaning to it. They're just like, oh yeah, I've just devoted my life to science. I want to do these things. Like it's a beautiful poetic thing for me to do. But it does seem to have that ring to it of ascension.
Or their god may be the female, which is always associated with the moon. And are they paying homage? Like, we just don't know. I mean, this is so interesting to me, that I didn't know people were buried on the moon.
Oh
So
yeah.
that was
Oh
new for
yeah.
me. Yeah.
Oh well, I knew that these space burials were happening. I did not know it had only been one, and I did not know his name, and I did not know his significance and his connection to the Apollo 11 moon
Wow.
landing. So that was crazy.
Fascinating.
Jordan, do you want to say something before we progress?
Oh, it's just super, super interesting. It's plastic what you were saying about thinking America is so rational and quote normal. I've been thinking a lot I have this thought frequently, just going about the world in the world. Typically, the people I interact with who self-identify as the most rational, the most logical, are so run by their emotions. It is insane to me. And I wonder, as we're kind of bringing Young into this, if that's because they've pushed the other to their subconscious so much they're not aware of it. But it's just such an interesting theme. And here, we've taught all of the we're indoctrinated in school not to believe in these things unless you're part of a more niche community. But mainstream education here, yeah, magic's not real. Oh, but all the people in charge are doing it every day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's makes it a bit more weird actually. It's like the discouraging people to practice it. Something I thought
Hmm.
when Heidi was talking about Steiner, I thought about it. I thought like whether his life story itself could, explain why he felt that way. Like, do you know any idea? Because I'm thinking about like in the society he was growing up, what would be the things that are happening that he was not very comfortable with. Explaining the idea that you have to embrace your shadow or something like that. Like, I think bad things might be happening, so he would be very uncomfortable with, like proposing that idea. I don't know.
I think Steiner was the great compartmentalist. Like he wanted to focus on other things and have people not focus on the sad things or deal with those. Like, oh, let's just go have this great dance instead, or let's go. He was kind of an overcomer, which I understand. There's many things that I think people get too far into the weeds and they want to go through every bad thing. Like we all have bad things, and that might not be helpful to you. Or maybe it's too tragic and that might not be helpful to you. So maybe I'm just guessing here, he had kind of an interesting situation with many things of his own. So I think maybe he might have had an uncomfortable working. I don't know for sure, but it sure reads that way. So I don't know.
We also
Heidi,
Interesting
do
discussed
you,
stuff.
that. Okay.
Nope.
We
oh,
Go
also
go
ahead,
ahead.
Austin.
discussed that the space is the mother's fluid. It's the womb. So it's like you're burying someone there. So it's very symbolic of
Oh,
Also, a
Rebirth.
lot of terrorists and people like that, they get buried in the sea. Sea burials. I know that
yes.
it's about the land laws that you're not supposed to bury this person because he's not a citizen or something like that, or like people will not take it. But like the sea itself is also a metaphor for the maternal, I think. So the
I
sea
think
and the
that's a
space.
fantastic insight.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So
With
it's
the
like a
water.
return to the,
Yes.
this is more of the return to the mother, to the great mother. Yeah. Back into the amniotic fluid. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
I like that a lot. I think that's probably what we're looking at. Wow. That was some great teamwork, guys. Thank you. All right. So this is the one that really is directed towards something that Jordan brought up last time. And I forget, do you have the text that you have been reading about the Tavistock Institute near you, Jordan? It might be helpful to pull it up because it is going to be ultimately connected to all of this. I should have put it in the slide. I think his name's like James Alston or something like that. I forget what it is.
Estelin.
Estelin?
Yes. Yes, I
Okay.
have the Kindle up.
Okay, you might want to pull up the quote that you had in mind. If you can. If not, it's totally okay.
I'm a
But
little embarrassed because as I was reading it, I was like, I want to know more. This was just
right.
such an aside comment. And the more I dug into it, it was really difficult to find more to it. So I know you dug into it. I kind of spiraled about it for 4 hours. And I agree with you. There's not a strong link story. However, I think the vibe of Auden was kind of in the mix with a lot of these thinkers, a lot of these artists and philosophers and the psychologists are all kind of swimming in the same soup.
Yeah.
But I'll let you take over, but I'll find that
All
quote
right.
for you.
Okay, sure. Yeah. I mean, I actually think it's even more interesting what I was able to come up with than the thing that you originally posited. So, W.H. Auden, I did not know this because I'm not some sort of Auden scholar. The only close reading of Auden I've ever really done is his work on the moon landing. Jordan and I did a little video on that, and really it precipitated a lot of the thoughts. Now it's getting deeper the more I'm saying it right now out loud, but
Mm.
it really precipitated some of the initial thoughts about this conjunctio, this hierogamos marriage of sun and moon in my mind and in her mind while we were doing that, and has really led to this idea about it being some sort of cosmic conception. But the way that the poem goes, it's like it's remarkably dissatisfied with the whole endeavor, right? That it's like just an expression of masculinity and success of material science. Um, he doesn't seem to be too thrilled with it, and that kind of captures a lot of the spirit of the time. When we looked at Ayn Rand and her expression about why so little art was generated by the Apollo missions, because she saw it as being fundamentally Apollonian, as opposed to the Dionysian, which was inspiring all this chaotic art. And artists themselves are chaos in her perspective, so they're not going to appreciate the accomplishments of engineering and science. But Auden was deeply influenced by Freud and Jung, more so Freud initially. He wrote that poem that I had up there. I believe it was just called In Memory of Sigmund Freud when he passed. And then as he got into more religious subjects, he developed more of an affinity for Carl Jung. But as far as I can tell, that's the strongest connection to the Tavistock Institute, because the founder of the Tavistock Institute was deeply inspired by both Freud and Jung. And his name was Hugh Crichton Miller. But I'll pause there for a second so Jordan can show us what she's got there on the screen from her book.
Yeah. So kind of like the lead up to it, they're talking about the Golden Dawn, blah, blah, blah. Then he goes on to say, Crichton Zoakos explains that among the other initiates in the Children of the Sun were T.S. Eliot, W.H. Auden, Sir Oswald Mosley, and D.H. Lawrence, Huxley's homosexual lover. It was Huxley, furthermore, who would launch the legal battle in the 50s. Well, yeah, anyway, we don't have to get too deep into it, but a lot of this is about Huxley.
Yeah.
These are some of the other figures on the periphery, but I know you're going to take it back to Jung, so.
Yeah. All right. Well, that gives me more information so I can dig deeper into it. But I think I know where this guy got his inspiration. The guy that wrote this book. What's his name again?
Estulin, Estulin.
Is it James Estulin? Is that his name or something like that? Yeah.
I'd have to.
I'll look deeper into it. Okay. So going back to the slide, if we can look at.
Yes.
We can look at this again. I've also included a paper by Stevenson about how Auden used Jung's typology in his writing. So what I think maybe everyone here is already aware of is that Jung actually gave a series of lectures at the Tavistock Institute. And those got compiled into this text, Analytical Psychology. But how exactly the Tavistock Institute may have used, like, we've talked about, and I don't want to trigger Ostick or anything like that. We've talked about like the Tavistock Institute and the connection to the Beatles, et cetera. But I kind of just started digging and looking into that a little bit. And a lot of these stories about the social engineering, I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying this is where it comes from. It comes from this text by Dr. John Coleman called The Conspirators' Hierarchy, The Story of the Committee of 300, where he connects a lot of dots. I have not read it. I have no idea if it's worthwhile at all. I have a hunch that we should read it for reasons I'm going to lay out here in a minute. But this is the text, and I went into it. I did some keyword search. He's the one that originated this claim that the Beatles were a Tavistockian creation and that they were doing this, trying to usher us into the Aquarian age. So I'm looking for this text, and where do I find it? I find it on the CIA website. That's strange. Why would this be on the CIA website? Like, especially since in many ways it's like incriminating the CIA and all the social engineering via Tavistock. Okay. Well, the reason why, and I don't know if you guys remember this when it happened, like in 2011, is that this was one of the books on Osama bin Laden's bookshelf. And the reason why it's on the CIA website is that they released that as part of the file on the Abbottabad raid on the compound. And I knew that Fritz Springmeier's book on like the Illuminati and stuff like that, like, was on bin Laden's bookshelf. Long and the short of it is, like, whenever you see like these books flat, like when you're watching a movie, like The Matrix, like Baudelaire's Simulacra and Simulation is flashed at the very beginning, right? It's like, hey, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, go read this book. I feel like a lot of the same stuff is happening here. Okay. Okay. Now, what's so fascinating about this text, The Conspirators' Hierarchy, is that it was a response to a very real but unpublished text called Changing Images of Man. And this was sponsored. Heidi's been at this a long time. She's probably like, yeah, I knew this like 15 years ago. But it was sponsored by the Kettering Foundation. And the kind of the point of it, I'll just kind of speak off the cuff here. But the point of it was, hey, what do we know about analytical psychology? What do we know about comparative religion, mythology, et cetera, where we can usher in a new paradigm to address what will be the challenges of the late 20th century and the 21st century, and have people think more globally, think more about ecology, and so that we can head off the catastrophes that plagued a lot of the 20th century. And that, I think that probably sounds good on some level. This was also done with the Stanford Research Institute, so that has all sorts of weird tentacles as well. But something that I found so fascinating about it, as I was like kind of Googling and trying to find out more about this obscure text, which you can find on Internet Archive, is that one of the major editorial reviewers of it, and even had a contribution to it, is Joseph Campbell. So it's like, what? Like I kept Googling this book, and it would come up as a Joseph Campbell listing, and it would also come up as a Markley Harmon listing. I'm like, well, oh, this is just a coincidence. No, it's because Campbell's one of the major editors, and in like the 1982 Pergamon Press one, his contribution is restored, and we can see what he has to say about essentially how mythological archetypes can be levered to kind of rewire man. And it's deeper than that. I've not read either of these, but this seems to be like a big deal. It's such a big deal that Marilyn Ferguson, who is perhaps most celebrated for writing what's known as the Aquarian Conspiracy, and I know that Heidi knows about this, and probably better than me. She was like, oh yeah, this is a great thing. Let me show you exactly how we can move people into the new age. I have not read it. I'm familiar with it. I found a copy of it, the book on tape on eBay for like $11. So it'll be here this week. So I'll dig into it. But isn't this wild? I don't know what to say. I'm just like, isn't this crazy? Isn't this fascinating? Like, so
I would really want to know if Geller and if Uri Geller is involved in this, if his name came up anywhere where you're looking, as well as the name escapes me right now. I'll find it. I do a whole thing on him all the time.
Right. It's very impactful. I know that this Changing Images of Man book, like they're all kind of swimming in it. Like it got into, I think Edgar Mitchell from Apollo 14 and the Institute of Noetic Sciences were deeply influenced in this. And I think there are connections there. And I imagine through the IONS that there are connections to Uri Geller, but I don't know.
Puharich, that's the name.
Yeah,
you have to see if Puharich is involved, because he's involved in all that. And if he's involved in all that, I'm going to tell you, he knows the keys for mental, we'll just say, training for things. Very sussy, bad, and bot, and would, I mean, it just fits perfectly. I mean, yeah, that just sprang to my mind immediately when you started reading off names. So also, I am so OCD. I have to tell you guys, Neil Armstrong was a Rotarian. He was Phi Delta Theta. He also was, according to the Grand Lodge of Ohio's website, a Freemason. So
Neil, so the Ohio claims him?
Claims him. Yes.
That's interesting.
So, and that's from their actual, like the Grand Lodge's website. So I had to do a deep dive there because, and Rotarian seems like it's nothing, but it's a lot. And the Rotarian Club gets crazy. So,
Well,
back to the regular schedule.
yeah, I mean, this is essentially what I'm pointing out here is like everything is connected to everything. I mean,
Yes.
was W.H. Auden like
Yes.
somehow part of all this and Tavistock? I don't think that's established at all. It's just kind of like
Every
it's
time
just
I have an existential crisis when I'm studying stuff like this, it's because I say exactly what just came out of your mouth. When my husband's like, "Well, who did it, or what was the background of it?" And I'm like, the answer is like, yes, it's all of them. It's everyone. Why are they all connected? It's yes. It's so annoying. And then they all pretend like they don't know each other, and they're like, "Psha, I don't know you." What? Yes, you do.
well, I don't know. I see. I'm
No.
squirrely about this because I'm walking this line. But you know, this stuff, the changing images of man, this stuff came out in the early 70s. Okay, so this is post Apollo, and but the thing that's interesting about all of it, you know, we've talked about what's going on here. Is it a naturally occurring event when we look at the Apollo missions or something like that, or you know, can the human mind be hacked and redirected via archetypal theory? And it seems like this is what this study was commissioned to dig deeper into. I do not know what the findings were. They might have been like, actually, you can't be done. Case closed. Let's not ever do that
Probably
to
what they'd
anyone.
say anyway. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then we
This
see
was
everything like 9/11. Okay. We see these just barely with Charlie Kirk. We see this collective feeling of things, and they harness that. There is no possible way. So same thing with back then, whichever way they're controlling population, simply done. Simply done. So like the comet, you still remember the fear from that
yeah, I do.
situation. Yeah.
I do remember that
So
dread of that comet.
exactly. And then think of if they're trying to steer society into a better age, I dare say back then, like, oh, look, we're going to the moon. Oh, look, we're doing these cool things, where really it's just energy to them. Either way, they're going to eat it. Anybody that's seen Monsters Inc. like gets the program. I mean, which is so silly to say, but it is what it is. Yeah.
Well, the point I would make about the comet is that because I've not taken a telescope out to actually look at Jupiter and compared previous images of Jupiter, I'm not sure exactly what level of evidence I would need to be satisfied, because all sorts of pyrotechnics could have been created in order to give the illusion of a comet smashing into Jupiter on the 25th anniversary of the moon landing. But the reason why I kind of push for this being a panentheist perspective that perhaps spiritual forces are in control of is that no amount of men could collude in order to put marks on the face of Jupiter, unless it's all pyrotechnics. Now, maybe they say those spots on Jupiter are like gone now and they healed up and there's nothing to see here. That would make that, I suppose, more suspicious. But if they're there and we could easily document it. Now, from what I understand, is that it hit Jupiter while it was like rotating away. So it hit like the backside of Jupiter. So you couldn't really observe the impact. Supposedly there were, plumes or whatever that could be seen around the edges or whatever.
What was the name of the comet again? Do you remember?
It's like Shoemaker-Levy 9 or Levy-Shoemaker 9. And I think that 9
might
is
be
really
important.
significant when we look at the numinosity stuff as well.
Okay.
So, yeah, I think Ostic has something to say here.
I just wanted to point out like why Joseph Campbell might be involved with this book. So I heard an interview of him, and he talked about like we need visions because intellect can only harness some true or false statement, but visions comes from within and from our dreams. So he talks about like myths have the power to transmit visions to the world. So I think that is why he might be a good candidate to contribute to this journal, because it's about a vision of society, what it's going to look like in the future, what's going to look like in the now, like where are we going. So I think
And
the
Joseph,
space program is a good example of human psychological future orientation kind of thing. Because
And I doubt
the
Joseph Campbell. I doubt Joseph Campbell was like, "Oh, I'm going to be really evil and try to like engineer all of humanity through the space program." He probably was like, "Yeah, these are like real." No, maybe I disagree, but like, he might have been like, "Yeah, we have real challenges in the 21st century, and to meet those challenges, these are the things that we ought to do." He probably felt like he was acting from a place of conscience. What would you say to that, Ostic? Let's say, and Heidi too, but I kind of interrupted Ostic. Let's say it's possible to hack the mind with these mythological visions. Is it appropriate to do that in order to face challenges that you perceive to be real? I mean, this is getting into an ethical conundrum. Ostic, let me give the floor back to you since I interrupted you.
I think it depends upon the. I'm not the one with the power to do that, so I don't think I can make that decision or like relate with the people. But I think like people like Campbell, they are on in their heart of hearts, like you or Heidi and Jordan here. They're scholars, they're seekers in a way. They think about things, they want to study, they are like fascinated by these myths. So I think Joseph Campbell was somewhat of a that character, like from what I have understood about reading about him and listening to him. So he might have thought like I am in a good position to like influence the world in a positive way. So I'm thinking about that he, even if he thought that you can influence the mind, l- why not do it for good? Because I heard Paul McCartney, have you seen his LSD interview or something like that? I think he talks about that. If you have been bestowed with so much power, why not use it for good? So we try to spread the message of peace and love. He talked about like that because they're aware of the power they have. These people of influence, and then they think about like the other musicians are there, they're doing like weird satanic things, you know and other musicians. So there's levels to what people do with the power when they have it. So I think Joseph Campbell, I think he was doing from in his heart like what he wanted to the world to be, to solve its problems in what he understood them at the time.
I
Because
generally think
20th
Campbell's
century
on.
was.
Yeah, I generally think Campbell was on the up and up, and he was a true believer. But maybe Heidi thinks there's something more nefarious.
I'm just always worried about who surrounds them. So I haven't had enough chance to see who is surrounding him because every instinct and everything that these people originally start with is usually harnessed for good, or they probably wouldn't do it, just like Tesla. Like he was like trying to help and then they just blew up his, literally. I mean, they're like, no, you don't get to do that, we're going to blow up your tower. So I think that ultimately these people get controlled, and the best phrase ever that I've heard anybody say of this is like, yeah, they let them take the reins and then one day they're like, oh, I'm a real boy, and they're like, no, you're not stupid, go back to the donkey islands. And so I feel like that's exactly what happened to JFK. I feel like a lot of this stuff has, when there's pushback, especially against people like Dulles or these people that are just like, blah, they're everywhere, like all the time. I mean, you're studying something as weird as the Seance of the Nine, and Dulles's girlfriend is there. Like, I'm not kidding, they're everywhere. And so when you're looking at that, you have to say, who was surrounding him, and did he give his ideas in a holistic, wonderful way, and they did whatever they did with it. Which is,
Yeah, I guess this is. I mean, to put it more bluntly, would you see Joe Campbell's like a useful idiot?
I mean,
Is that? I feel like that's what you're
it's so
saying.
sad. I feel like the most smart people, like Howard Hughes, okay, IQ 159, like these people are not dumb. Like even Elon, to a point, although he has a dark family, so he's a
Yeah,
little different. These other people that have no knowledge, and they really are, like Howard Hughes was pulled into everything because he literally was against communism and he was all about patriotism. And then they used him until they killed him, basically, in my opinion. They can say he died all he wants. He's got hypodermic needles stuck in his body. You don't do that back then. That's stupid. And drug addicts know how to do it. Like, they're not going to have multiple needles stuck in there. So same thing for this guy. I don't know enough about his surroundings to know yet, But now you've probably sent me down a little spiral, so maybe
Yeah.
I'll be figuring it
Yeah.
out.
Well, and Luke, who first published Joseph Campbell, the
Mhm.
Bollingen Institute. We just did a deep dive there. Who funded the Bollingen Institute? Well, now we know. Like, can I just say, like, now we know, oh, like this family is sort of CIA royalty.
They always are.
I, I'm just looking at the larger trends.
Yeah. And I'm just curious. Like, I don't know these people. I can't personally talk to them, but in general, like even with Jung, and then Heidi, you probably know much more about Alice Bailey than I do, but she's someone who I've been kind of interested in recently. And really the Aquarian conspiracy as a concept, like that book kind of put me down that rabbit trail, because I was like, where did most of these ideas get seeded into the culture? Because you see so much of the new age movement, whatever, like there's all these patterns, these themes. Where did they come from? And I'm eternally curious, like how much were these just organic, genuine insights that were put into the world and then hijacked, distorted, et cetera, et cetera? At what point was it perverted and twisted? And you kind of see that everywhere, like everything right now. It's like all of the symbols, underneath there is this beautiful energy, this beautiful, I guess even like just tapestry of life force kind of playing out in all of these different geometries and colors and frequencies, which is amazing. And we have we find ourselves in an environment where there's this artificial grid kind of laid on top of it, trying to siphon energy from it that may not be of light. I mean, you could say antichrist, like in the sense of these are forces that don't necessarily have the same like spark of the divine, that are trying to siphon it off through these like funnels and things on top of this.
I
I
hear what
don't
you're
know if I'm
saying.
being super articulate.
No, you're doing
No,
great. I think it's a
you're doing
beautiful
good.
expression.
I get it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
talking about. See, that's the thing, and that kind of rubs up against the difficulty that I have talking about this stuff, because I'm aware of both levels. Like I've been at
Exactly.
this a long time. I know all about the connections. Okay, like maybe not as well as Heidi. Heidi's really good at that, but I'm
just
trying
a
to.
weirdo.
No, you're great. You're great. I really appreciate that, but I really want to try. I really want to focus on that tapestry layer of psychic energy that is like coursing through everything, that is writing and driving everything. That pattern, that's the thing that I'm really after. But it touches on that perhaps manufactured grid, that artificial grid that you speak of. And so
I think
that's
Jung
the
told us that.
difficulty.
Yeah, I think
How
he
do you
told us
think?
that in the Seven Sermons of the Dead. He's talking all about Abraxas, the great and terrible Abraxas, which is neither good nor evil, but it is not he's neither. And so he's the God above gods, but he isn't. It's like, oh, don't even worship him, don't even anything, because then he'll be terrible. Like it's always this good and evil. Like he even says, if you get something good from that God, like you will have something reciprocated bad in the same level to weigh the scale. It's all about these scales clear back to Egypt and Babylon. And every time, this always goes back there. When we look at everything, like we've got to look at Hinduism, we've got to look at, Egypt, we've got to look at these things that people don't want to look at because it breaks their reality. Is there good in theosophy? I've studied anthroposophy for sure a lot, and theosophy quite a bit. There is a lot of good in Steiner. Okay. However, then you flip that coin, there's always that other side of things, and that's part of this puzzle. But I do think this energy is there. Like, to your question, do I think that there is something? Well, look at the four of us that knew nothing about each other, worlds almost apart, literally, like, and yet we have this baseline because we're seeking the truth.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not going with NASA or the CIA anytime
Yeah.
soon. So
I don't think any of
they
us
get,
are.
money
Yeah.
or fame, or, even the thought of, don't you want to help humanity? I mean, this is how I could see somebody like Joseph being sucked in. Don't you want to help humanity elevate to a higher consciousness with your assistance and your work? And then they just screw him, because it happens every time. I mean, it's awful. Like, we look at the Vril Society, the Thule Society, like, look at all these old things that they initially started in this good way, and then things went left real fast, literally
Well, I think,
left.
I mean, I don't know. I'm not intimately aware of Campbell's biography, but like he lived a pretty good life, I think. Like he got his work out there. It had a lot of impact on culture. I think later in life was kind of a celebrity on PBS through Bill Moyers. So
I mean, even Steiner says, do you want to learn how to literally travel worlds with your mind? Go push an old person on the beach. He's not telling people to do evil things, but did they take that and make it something else? Yeah.
I think the butterfly encapsulates it for me. Like, Project Monarch, blah, blah, blah. And so I found myself not using butterflies as much, but I love butterflies. So,
Well, and you have to look at it for what that you are, your intention. Ultimately, that's the main. Like, don't let it drive you away, because I had an existential crisis over praying. Like, I was like, oh my gosh,
mhm.
is Amen, Amen Ra? And like, do I call him God or Lord? Like, what about Lord? Lord is bad. Like, I went through this whole phase where I was like, I just don't know what to do. And it's all to make you not believe in something as beautiful as nature, right? Like, as beautiful as God, as beautiful as the things around you that surround you in a good way. They want all of it to be demonized. So then what? Nothing's light. Nothing. So
Well
you use your
said.
fair
butterflies.
point.
I agree. I think some of the work to be done now is to reclaim um, these symbols, these frequencies that are just part of the natural life energy, and bring back a positive intention with them.
Would be nice. I mean, maybe we're not, you know, as popular as some, but we can sure try and do what we can do, right? They can't stop that.
For sure. I do want to be somewhat quick about the next two slides because it's getting late where Ostic is. I want to make sure we get all through the Fraser material as well. Also, my commanders are playing, so there's that too. I'm joking. Okay, so if we can just, I wanted to look at this number situation here. I don't know if I have much more clarity. If you guys got a chance to look at the stuff that we did last time on Apollo 13, noticeably absent from that list is the number 11. And we know that the number 11 is a big, big deal. Like especially when we talk about these like major world events with Apollo 11, 9/11, not to mention like the personal synchronicities that people think they have all the time where they're seeing 11/11 in microwaves. Ironically, I saw that today before we got ready to do this. I'm like, okay, now I'm noticing 11/11 in the microwave. But I've looked kind of high and low, and I don't really have any good leads. We know about 10 and 12 and 13 from a Jungian perspective and why they might have some numinosity as far as 10 and 12 are concerned with completion and order, and 13 being this transgressive number that violates that complete cycle. But 11 is more difficult to find, and I've tried to get into Marie von Franz's number in time. It's been difficult. One thing that I will say is that one potential place to look that could be rewarding, I do not know, is the I Ching. The I Ching is a major part of what Jung was doing with his work. And I'm not some expert in the I Ching. It makes an appearance in his work on synchronicity. He wrote the foreword for Richard Wilhelm's version. From what I understand, it's kind of like consulting an oracle. It's kind of like divination. And I was like, what is hexagram 11 from the I Ching? And it's interesting. It's this one called peace or harmony, depending on the translation that you're looking at. And it's about the unification of heaven and earth. And I feel like that's really interesting and potentially relevant. I have no idea if it's a proper application to understanding these numbers, but just here's one of the passages early on. Heaven and earth unite, the image of peace. Thus the ruler divides and completes the course of heaven and earth, and so aids the people. And this pictogram here, you can see that the upper part, I guess the trigram has something that looks like an 11, and that's the image for the earth, and the lower part has these three lines that are connected with heaven. So I'm just putting that there. I have so much more research to do on this, but potentially relevant. Also, you could talk about 11. It is also breaking the completeness of 10. So that might have something to do with that, and what that means as far as like, okay, are we ushering in a new cycle? Like we're beginning again? It might have something to do with that. And we can talk about this, but I want to let's just maybe talk about 5, and we can talk about 5 and 11 at the same time. So Jordan, if you wouldn't mind progressing to the next slide, unless Osik, do you want to say something real quick? Sure, let's go back.
Yeah, it talks about peace. So I was thinking about it in terms of Doctor Strangelove, and the recall code is peace on earth or purity of essence. So I
Yes.
kept thinking about that, like, and then POE is Edgar Allan Poe as well. So did you guys talk about it in the last episode?
Yeah, we
Okay.
did. That's good.
Okay, right. So so that's what I thought, because in the Roman times there was this idea of time being still. There's a destiny of people, and it stops when the Roman Empire is founded by Augustus. So he talks about, like, after I am the emperor, I'm going to create eternal peace. So there's this idea of, creating peace. And I think the calendar, it's supposed to be like December is the last month, and December is 10. So there used to be 10 months in the calendar back in the day. Afterwards, like, Julius Caesar added 2-3 months more to, like, actually make the calendar work fine. So I'm thinking about it in terms of, like, 11 might be a significant number. Or when you talk about 13 is like it creates disharmony. So if you have 13th month, so it means like your cycle is not continuing as it should. I'm just riffing off here, so like what it
Yeah,
talked about. Yeah, these things.
cool.
Yeah.
I had here in the title, I mean, I think it's pretty obvious, but I even see the 1111 in Apollo 11. Like those double L's look like 11s to me, and that might be relevant on some level.
Also, 11/11 is 11th of November, so
Yeah.
November is 9. So yeah, think like that.
Yeah, that gets into that gets into some interesting things. Yes. Let's go to 5. Let's go to the next slide if we can. I thought, we'll get through these little. Now I know why Osik was like, "Can we do this at the end?" Yeah, I forgot. I didn't have time to rearrange them. Okay, so the number 5. We talked about the number 5 in terms of this Jack and the Beanstalk motif that we seem to encounter in Apollo 14 and the Apollo Soyuz missions, and how it connects to the tree of life, the Kabbalistic tree of life, and Jacob's ladder, and this idea of ascending to heaven through the integration of the shadow, like understanding the roots in hell and the ascension aspect of all of this, as Carl Jung would talk about. But what was so interesting is that in regards to there's like more 5s in these Apollo stories. We talked about there being the 5 different species of moon trees that they took around the moon or whatever. But then like the most obvious 5 is the Saturn V rocket. I don't know why that didn't occur to me. And then I think Jordan and I got in this little conversation about perhaps there was a connection between Orion and like Easter eggs. And what I found there is that in this Orion capsule that they have associated with Artemis, they have gone and hidden 5 different Easter eggs in the Orion capsule So this number 5 and hiding and taking and naming the rock, and I think it has something to do, I'm not entirely sure, but I think it has something to do with like the human pentagram. It has something to do, we have 5 sentences, we have 5 senses, 5 appendages, we have, and so there seems to be some aspect to this number 5 where the elemental aspects of us are perhaps give way to a new type of consciousness or something like that with the 5th element, right? So the arms and the legs, and then ultimately the mind. So I'm not exactly sure, but I just wanted to point that out. It was so interesting. I had the night before, the night prior to us going out to pizza one night, I was digging into this Orion Artemis, the Easter eggs that they planted throughout the capsule, and we picked up a pizza. The guy in the pizza place was wearing an Orion Artemis shirt, and I was like, "Oh my god!" Like, I've stopped including the synchronicities because we
I
have
can't
so
go
little
anywhere.
time. Yeah, I can't. I was like, "Why? Why?" He's like, "Well, I got it off Amazon, and
He
whatever."
did work for NASA.
Yeah. I don't want to. Yeah,
Yeah.
but it was.
He's not
I
going
was
to
like,
see this.
"Oh, well, all right."
They're on to you.
Small. It's a small world, as we've learned this past week or so.
That's
It's
true.
Small world.
I mean,
So-
it's interesting that they're hiding it. They're hiding it, then they're telling you that there are 5 hidden Easter eggs. So it's like there's an element of mystery that they want you to know something about it. There's something,
Yeah. Well, they want, like there's like, and the references, like the stuff that they put in the Orion capsule is like all in-group knowledge. Like there's a reference to someone named Charlie who is like important in the program. There's callbacks to the Apollo missions in it. So it's not like esoteric in terms of like occult sort of things, but it's just kind of like these references. Like if you're I don't know, it's like Taylor Swift references. She's like, we got to put a new record out, and she's referencing album 2 and album 15 or something like that. Like if you're in, it's not like you don't know, you're not allowed to know these things. So it raises this very interesting question. They're pretty much coming right out and saying, we put Easter eggs in all the missions. Please try to find them. But whatever you do, don't look beyond the ones we've acknowledged, because there are no more. And it's like, that's why I almost feel like I get freaked out about talking about some of the things we talk about here, because like whatever, okay, but it's almost like everything that we're encountering in this life, it's like bad on purpose. It's coded on purpose. I think it's almost like some arrangement we have entered into is like, we are on the Easter egg hunt, and it whatever we think we are up against, they kind of want us to find it. I look back at that SRI study. What they were really trying to do was like integrate Eastern perspectives with Western perspectives. And I think in general, they wanted to make people like smarter and more psychic. And it's like, well, what's one way we could do this? Well, we could plant all these crazy clues in everything, and like they will actually like find new levels of consciousness in the process. Like I think someone somewhere wants to breed schizophrenic conspiracy people. Or why make it so bad? It's so bad on purpose.
Well, this one isn't
I bet
entirely
it's
bad.
connected to that book.
But I mean, this one is, 5 is like human perfection. It also can be a talisman for protection. The Seal of Solomon, of course,
Yeah.
we know.
Yep.
And maybe they were trying to protect things. At this point in time, things were sketchy. So maybe they were trying to blanket protection over humanity.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, that's one happy thing I could say. Depends on which side the star is. If they flipped it upside, we're all screwed. But but upright, it's all good.
Well, Heidi, what do you think? Do you think, I'm curious, I spent a lot of time with Jordan Ostick about this, but do you think there could be like an attempt to create benevolent psychosis in people like us?
I don't know about I don't know about in the thinkers, but yes. I mean, how many times do we have a new prophet and then things go terribly wrong? Okay. This psychosis ends up like, and then there's an angel and let's swap wives and you can have 100 wives. And that's usually how it goes with a new book, right? Like it's always benevolent at first. And then we take a hard left. And I think by that time, even for John Dee, again, 5 books of mystery back with John Dee. Well, we see this time and time again where they start out so good and then it just goes so bad but they comply. That's the difference. Okay. If somebody all of a sudden said to me, okay, I'm in this, I'm fully in this is what I mainly think about all the time now. Just all the research and different things. If somebody all of a sudden came to me and said, now to get all of the knowledge, you got to share your husband. Yeah, get the hell out of here. I'm not doing that. Like it has to be about that compliance at some point, where I think the test is for a lot of people. And I just saw this random video about this and it fits here, where people were tested in an elevator and everybody turned the wrong way. They didn't turn toward the door. They turned like weird ways, backwards or whatever. And it was like to do a study on these people, and every single person eventually turned and complied. There's no way I would do that. I would be like, in fact, I think I would be verbally like, what are you weirdos doing? Like, why are you doing that? Get away from me. Like, go behind me or something. Like, I wouldn't do that. I would be questioning. So for those that have this, I think what you said at first, they're trying to enlighten people because we can't get to the end. Their end goal is to get to the end and have it either come by enlightenment or we get into Zabbatai Zevi, and that's a whole mess. So, it's either going to come by light or dark. And so if they're trying to wake people up, it can go horrifically wrong, or case in point, it could be used, right? Maybe it's not horrifically wrong. Maybe they did that on purpose to use it. So I don't think everybody's inherently evil. Quite a matter of fact, I think we're all born on the light side, but things can go desperately wrong. And why? Because there's always false gods involved. You want money, you want women, you want cars, you want men, you want whatever it is, you want that Gucci bag. Like, it always is something that they can use. And for those of us that don't have that, like, 0 sponsors, like, can't shut me up. Like, sorry about that. And that's scary for them. And you get ostracized immediately. I will tell you that.
Well, that raises an interesting question. If it is inviting us to a form of enlightenment by encouraging us to go on this giant puzzle game, right? Would your analogy, right? If someone came along and be like, "Hey, you can know all the secrets of the universe," like you're so addicted to information and discovery and sussing everything out, you just have to compromise like the sanctity of your marriage, and we'll give it to you. And maybe that's like kind of I've gotten addicted to the knowledge, and now it's like, well, how far are you willing to go? How much do you really love truth, Luke? What are you prepared to compromise or give up?
Right. And it goes right back to the Garden of Eden right there. Because what was it that Lucifer, he gave her what? The knowledge of good and evil. Like, this has always been about knowledge. This has always been about temptation since the beginning. Whether or not people believe in that story is fine. You can use it as an allegory. To me, it's real because I'm a Christian. But I am just saying, ultimately, what was the temptation? It's always knowledge and pride. Always. And the pride comes before the fall. And why? Because John Dee spent most of the years of his life trying to figure out that knowledge. And when it came to his wife, maybe that sacrifice was necessary because he was prideful and needed that. At some point, you have to know when to back up. Like, I easily could have done that with the Charlie Kirk thing. I'm here in Utah. I refused to speak about it for 3 days. And I actually didn't speak about it for 10 because I knew what they were doing. They were charging the house and I refused to play their game. So I was like, yeah, I have a lot of things to say about this later. Pray for the family. Bye. I'm sure they hate me for that. But like, ultimately, we have to know who we are inside. I know ultimately I'm not changing on an elevator if everybody's weird. I'm just like, you're weird. And I won't say, like, I probably would say it out loud. Like, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? They don't like people that do that. They don't like that. They burn them as steaks.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a trick. It's a trick. Like, oh, we'll give you more. We'll show you like more of reality. When the moment you make that bargain, you are closing off your ability to access it fully because you're no longer receiving it through your connection, through your body temple directly from source, from God.
Right.
And like,
Because
no
you
one else
shut it
can do that
off. Yeah,
because you
you
shut it
shut it
off.
off.
And decided to take on the belief that someone outside of you would be able to jack you into truth more than you could do for yourself.
And when is enough enough? When is enough enough? And step aside and say, yeah, there's mysteries in the universe.
There always will be.
Yeah, exactly.
It just keeps expanding.
And my pride is not that way because I never see part of the whole Mormon church's issue is they want to become God. Well, I don't. I'm a happy servant and people, I'm not a slave. There's a choice. A servant is someone that serves because of the grace of their heart, not because they're forced. Not the same. So, yeah.
All right, good stuff. Okay. I propose that we take a 5-minute break, okay? And then we'll go through the Frasier. Is that okay with everybody?
Yep.
Sounds great.
All right,
Absolutely.
let's just pause it for a minute, okay? I appreciate that.
There you go.
Before getting too far into it, I'll frame it. There were two things that came to mind going into my examination of all these different taboos. The first thing, because I think I'm kind of like primed to pick up on it, were how much of this could be applied to whatever happened in 2020. Okay, in regards to how we treat strangers, what we think is coming in and out of our mouths, why we need to mask them, et cetera, et cetera. But also, and I was joking about this with Jordan before we went on the air. I was like, there's a lot of woo girly stuff in this as well. And I don't want to put Jordan on blast or anything like that. So I imagine she's going to have, you've got your sage right there, the clearing aspect of this seemed applicable.
And for your rationalistic mind, the saging also has an ionizing effect. So you can look into that.
So yeah, this gets into the whole thing, right? It's like intention, right? Like, so, and that could be applied to all the
here's
space
what I'm
stuff
trying
that
to
we
say.
looked at as well.
I have an air ionizer back here that's like from a science company, and it works quite well. Also, the sage does a very similar thing, and it's burning a bundle of dried plants. So I'm just saying it's like you can take it from either way, but they're both trying to accomplish a similar thing.
Right, but I guess it raises a very interesting question, and it perhaps helps us understand is what is the priority, right? Does the spiritual belief precede the scientific understanding, right? So imagine, like, in regard to your woo girl practices, if I may call them that, that it's the spiritual belief that precedes the science. And that raises an interesting question about what we've been looking at in regards to the Apollo programs. Do the spiritual beliefs, because people are like, oh, you can't talk about the Apollo programs with archetypal psychology and ritual and all this other stuff.
Yes, we can.
Perhaps I need to say, well, I aim for clarity here, because you're like, people go, there was real science and all this stuff going on there. And the way you're talking about it is undermining the credibility of that science. Like,
No.
I guess one could say, just like Jordan's clearing practices, that is a spiritual belief that she posits and then finds science to back it up.
John Dee is the perfect example of this. He was a mathematician who said numbers were God's language. He was very scientific minded and brilliant. However, he also table tapped. Let's be realistic here. He made the table. So there's that.
Mm,
Why does it have to be one?
that's
Yeah.
yeah. Well, it's just a matter of priority. That's the question I'm getting into. But let's get into the reading. I mean, were there any sort of general thoughts about this reading? I mean, what came to mind when you guys read it?
Earlier today, when you opened this, you said stranger in a strange land. And I think we could do a whole study of that book, which is
Mhm.
more modern. But I just wanted to highlight that as a concept is fascinating and where we get the term grok from. So anyway, that's just a whole different rabbit hole I think we could go down,
Yeah.
but not today.
There's lots of Heinlein involved in the Apollo
There
missions,
is.
but not necessarily in Fraser. Yeah.
Yep.
What about you, Ostic?
I keep losing my train of thoughts. I think in my mind what I'm going to say, and then the conversation shifts
Yeah,
to another
that's
direction.
yeah, it does. Yeah,
I'm
it's a little
like,
squirrely.
okay, I have to catch up again. So I was thinking about is in terms of what we had discussed in the last chapters. I think there are things that are gonna come up about, you cannot touch the king. There's a taboo to even see the king, to watch him eat. One guy was executed for like even just watching a king eat. So I think, like we talked about, these kings, they are aura farming in a way. They want to be disembodied, completely everywhere, omnipresent. They're trying to, like become gods in a sense. They don't want them to know, but their influence should be everywhere. And these very hardline rules are set up too. I think all of these. I wondered like this chapter would be very salacious, but then it was kind of very normal. So yeah, that was my main impression. I was pretty disappointed. I was thinking, oh, strangers. Oh yeah, something's going on. Then it's like nothing happens. Stupid things like, not stupid, but like the usual stuff that we discuss.
Well,
Well,
what's
let's see.
usual to
Let's
us now is maybe
yeah.
so different than it was several months ago before starting this. But I do want to say, like, taboo being in the title of this chapter, I totally understand where you're coming from.
I definitely
Yeah.
felt like, again, two things. 100% immediately went to Howard Hughes in my brain, just because so much of this, goes right down the line of that. But also, when we're talking about cutting off the speaking to God and these high body counts that people are doing, and they don't understand that there's a soul transaction, when you're with someone, and especially just a stranger, you don't know what they're transferring to you, etc. And I don't care what plastic is between you. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's the great cutoff again. They're trying to, push that often now. So
Well, I look forward to applying this to this world event that we all went through and thinking about contagion in that respect. So, I mean, we've talked a lot about the importance of the king in all these different cultures and how the king is like essential, like essentially like at the center of the universe for a lot of these cultures. And if he has to, we looked at it with like the emperor of Japan. He had to like hold his gaze in such a way. And this whole expression, heavy as the head that wears the crown, like has a new meaning for me when you understand like just how much the community depended upon their monarch to uphold the stability of their entire way of life, and how easily they could overthrow them if they felt like he was the source of disruption in their life. So uh, uh, it makes sense that they would impose all these different taboos on their leader to make sure that their quality of life was not destabilized. And a lot of that is to make sure that their leader does not get possessed, have his soul extracted, suffers any sort of illness that would bode uh, bad for the collective. And yeah, let's see what I have here. The we're going to look at things like enforcing seclusion, um, and fearing of strangers. A lot of it is cleansing the strangers that they encounter with. So the graph or the charts that I have here, we can just take a look at some of these. Um, it, one of the examples that Fraser talks about is how like Turkish shamans would purify Justin II's ambassadors with incense. And there were other scenarios he talked about, like where animal sacrifices and things like that would be made, because there's this idea that these strangers that are encountering the leaders and the people, that they are bringing these malicious spirits from elsewhere into the community. So all these things have to be done in order to essentially sanitize them of these malicious spirits that are perhaps attached to them. The Apalai Indians, what they would do if strangers would visit them, they would take these ants, and in order to disarm whatever sort of magical danger that they would harm them, they stung them with these ants. I guess there is this idea that if they could cause pain in visiting strangers, that somehow they could make the demons like leap out of them. There's also these stories about using peppers like underneath the fingernails and putting it in the eyes. I forget which communities were doing this. I think in the Ulier spice sprinkling and the Java pepper for gout, and the Slave Coast had these pepper cuts. And if we want to go to the next slide, they would in the Ong Tong of the Java Islands, they would do maybe something not as painful, but they would have sorcerers there that would sprinkle strangers with water and anoint them with oil. This doesn't sound so bad compared to having peppers put underneath your fingernails or put in your eyes or being pepper sprayed or something like that. But then we get into what people may do when entering into strange lands. And I'll pause there for a second just to get some commentary from you guys. Ostic? Yeah.
You talked about
There-
the 2020 event. So I was thinking about the preceding event of the 2020 that was in the US, specifically about the AIDS crisis in the 1980s.
Ah,
So
yeah, we
there's
lived through that. Yeah.
it actually, enforced that taboo in society, that you should not be having, contact with strangers, because like actual sexual contact with strangers, because it carried this risk. So like, I'm not sure. I'm just thinking about it in terms of literally, like it's a taboo. You cannot have intercourse, because I think gay people, when they during that time, I think they had to resort to like meeting strangers in strange places, in clubs or in the alleyways, things like that. So I'm thinking about in that terms. Literally, you are enforcing this. You cannot have that. If you have, it's a death sentence.
Well, yeah, Heidi can back me up on this because she was there too. But I remember being I was like 5 years old in 1985, and we both lived through this whole Ryan White thing. And there was a ton of hysteria in the early days of the HIV outbreaks. I remember being like a kid in elementary school, and like we were seriously confused. Like we didn't know if like we could even drink from water fountains anymore,
Holding
'cause we were like,
hands. Yeah.
and stuff like that. We like, because the mechanism of transmission, I mean, we didn't even really know about sex yet, but it was it seemed like there was like it was unclear if it was airborne or how exactly it could be transmitted. And I remember having a lot of anxiety about that in school. I think back in my elementary school stuff, and I think about like some of the trauma events we had with like the Challenger explosion and stuff like that. But that was kind of up there. And I really liked basketball during this era. And even today, my football team is like partially owned by Magic Johnson, right? It's like, and Magic Johnson has had like HIV and AIDS for like 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time it was like, oh, okay, this like titan of professional sports has like been hit by this disease. So, I guess what I'm trying to say here is that I very much felt that taboo, and it raises a very interesting question when you talk about 2020 and that event. Like, how much is tapping into these old taboos? How much of these old taboos were accurate, but perhaps didn't track with the right science? And how much erroneous science we may have because it is in touch with a taboo from our ancestors. Like this gets into a whole conversation about whether or not, like, there are a lot of people out there now who like straight out don't believe germ theory because of what happened in 2020, have opted for understanding of terrain theory. I kind of subscribe to some sort of hybridized perspective at this moment in time. Like, but it gets in this question about what is prior. Is the religious system the taboo? Does that facilitate the science, or is the science driving the taboo?
Well, and the occult rituals behind all of this stuff, like the way they went about this, and who's in charge on both ends. You bring up, AIDS. We got Fauci on both ends here. Pretty sussy there. He's involved with both of these situations. Plus, they knew about it before. Like, there's too much planned stuff going on here on this one, even so far as, oh, you're going to have that in your presidency. Like they've put this out there. This was definitely something to roll out. As far as AIDS, I think they were, doing two things. They were trying to get rid of a certain people that they didn't want, necessarily around. And, people are saying that the poppers that they would take at different clubs and whatnot were probably tainted, and it had probably a lot to do with that as well. Like different, drugs that were being made. I mean, heaven knows where they're being made at, like in somebody's bathroom or something, like so bad,
Well, there's some concern that the actual drugs that were administered for people that were
100%.
testing positive were actually inducing
they
the
were killing
symptoms of
them.
the disease.
Mhm.
And this gets into a question about the reliability of the PCR test that was used really in both
Well,
in both epidemics.
And the treatment is bad on both ends. Period.
Yeah.
The treatment
is
scary.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, we can get into that. I'm kind of just thinking about the cultural manifestation of it, but I know Jordan's going to have to weigh in on this.
Well, earlier you were talking about how it's so obvious. We see all these things. Why is it so obvious? Are they trying to usher in this evolution of human consciousness? As Ostick and Heidi pointed out, 2020 was an exact replay of the exact same playbook with some slight tweaks and a very similar cast beyond just Fauci, not just him. And it makes me wonder, okay, perhaps some of us are being sort of triggered or shepherded in this expansion of consciousness, but also thinking about all the Saturnian imagery everywhere. Is this a dividing of the wheat and the chaff, right? Is this a harvesting and delineating between those who are awake and those who are not, and those who are not, who, I mean, this is sick, but like really, it seems like those people are viewed as inhuman or subhuman. Even if you get into some of the legal definitions of human being, it varies quite a lot from dictionary to dictionary, law dictionary to law dictionary. And in some instances, they even say the human being can be a monster in its lower form. And I wonder if some of these rituals are almost about taking implied consent or making the assumption that some people are not advanced enough to give consideration to give autonomy to allow them to make their own decisions. And instead, like, sure, we can psyop and program those people because they're not getting it. They're not seeing it. We're giving them all these opportunities to see it. Now, I don't know. Like, I really struggle with this because this idea of like it has to be consent based. Well, like if that were true, I think we're looking at a very perverted sense of the word consent. But like, yeah, it's obvious to us, but it's not obvious to a lot of people, even though it was literally the exact same situation 40 years later. And I didn't live through the first one, but like it doesn't take that much research to find all this information that Ostick kind of brought to the table. So I don't know, it feels like this siphoning.
Right. Well, there's a lot there.
Just
Larry, look, there's a lot there.
one other conspiracy thing. I think in context of India, it actually enabled a lot of digitalization in a sense. Like, I think I don't want to say this on a public platform, but I think they're trying to, use India as an experiment to try out digital currency and like CBDCs and something. So I'm like looking at it, and I've known this since the pandemic because suddenly everyone is doing cashless transactions. You cannot even find printed money. Like new notes are not being printed. I see it's a suppose a $10 bill, a $10 $1 bill. It's a low currency, so it's not being printed. In I'm trying to create an analogy. So it's the lower currencies are not being printed. So this is, I think they're deliberately trying to roll it out. So suddenly they're discontinuing some notes and creating problems with people. I think what they're trying to do is trying to create CBDCs. You know, and there's a lot under the guise of the pandemic. A lot of things happened in India. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
Oh,
there's
you're
not just
so
one agenda. There's like 100 different objectives in all of this stuff. So, I mean, we had something similar happen here. We had like coin shortages. No one really gave like like why are we having coin shortages in the middle of this? I would always go to the banks and be like, why now? And they'd be like, we don't know. It's funny. I mean, it's kind of amazing like how many people are just kind of going through the motions. I know we all know this. If you were to go to a bank right now and just ask people like who's on the money, they couldn't tell you. Like
mm.
we're just I just work here.
Well, never mind that they literally just make up the money, even pre
All right.
CBDCs, even pre CBDCs. It's insane. Like I thought I understood it, and then recently I've been going into it deeper. I'm like, oh, this is even more insane than I thought. Like literally every bank creates credit.
Jordan is so passionate about these issues right now. I know.
It's insane.
I know, and I just know you could talk about it for like 3 hours.
Yes. But I had a coworker, Ostic, who was in India during all of that. And so, we were chatting all the time. And like, he literally could, I don't know if this was your experience, but he literally could not leave his neighborhood without showing somebody a smartphone with a QR code and like had to be cleared to travel.
Yeah, that's what was happening. People were not
Yeah.
being allowed to travel. A lot of people got stuck, and what they did was like they sent a lot of people who were not able to go home. They sent them on the borders to work on projects there. So the government was under the guise of a pandemic. A lot of things were happening, good and bad. But like I could see the general trend was like digitalized because it's a huge population. So it brings a lot of people suddenly under the their all their things are. And then this new taxation policy, there's a lot of things happening in India very quickly. From 2018 2020 it
Australia too.
suddenly changed from a very uh, tran- non-transparent society to a very quote unquote transparent society, very digitalized. Everyone has a phone now. Everyone suddenly phones got cheaper, internet got cheaper, everything all all together. So it was like, wow, it's interesting. We could not even imagine because in 2014 I used to have 2G internet. So I used to like buffer videos. I could not even watch videos. I used to watch magic videos. And suddenly in 2018 it's like 4G, anything can work. And then after that, oh, online classes now. So things like that.
Yeah.
It goes back to the elevator and to your wife. Like, are you going to turn and face the way the people are facing, or are you going to be the weird one and faces the correct, normal way to get out the way you've always done it? Or are you going to give your wife up? Like, they're kind of done with the carrot and the stick. People are kind of sick of it, and now it's just the stick, in my opinion.
Maybe.
It was pretty bad. Like, I don't know. Me and my husband, like, I was ready to lose my job, and
Yeah.
we bought a trailer. And I said, like, you can buy the trailer now because we might have to live in it because I'm not doing it. And I'm not. And I'm a nurse and I'm not. And he was like, well, I'll do it, at my job. I'm like, no, you're not. He's very athletic. That's the people it was. Isn't it funny that that's the people that it was affecting? But I was talking to people at my work that they were just, and there was a specific population in my experience that were having a harder time with it than others, which was a brown population. And they were immediately putting them on ventilators and people were dying like right and left, not because they had it, but because they went in for treatment. And I have asthma severely. Like, I don't have a little asthma. Like, I try to die all the time.
Mm.
And I told my husband, and we both got the Delta, and it was awful. And I told my husband, unless I'm going to die, you don't call the hospital. And I will tell you
Yeah.
when I can't talk anymore, that's when it's going to be. And I didn't go. So, I mean, yeah, it's scary because it was that bad. People were just not making it once they got treatment.
It's interesting, man.
Well,
I mean, it was a pattern. Like anyone who went to the hospital, they died. It's like, and you're not even allowed to see the person. So it's like people who are staying home, they're treating themselves, drinking tea and everything. Like taking in steam. They were staying alive. They were getting healthy. But all the people who were being sent to the hospital, they were dying. Like no one came. Two, three people of my family, they died. You know, like my grandmothers. So it was like weird in a way. So I was like shaken, like what's happening here? Like sharing
It
numbers and
scared,
everything.
yeah, it scared me too because when the cure came out, it also seemed to affect a certain population with very bad side effects and if not death. Two people in one family, my friend's a nurse, she lost her mom to the disease. Her dad told him to go get, what, and left. He lived, he's fine. They said he needed a ventilator. He's like, "No, I don't. I'm going home." He was fine, she was not. And then her husband got the cure and he was 34 or something and he died immediately, like right after. So,
Young people are getting heart
right.
attacks. Young people are getting heart attacks in India. Like 25-year-olds, they're getting heart attacks. Like normal, simple living, no drinking, no smoking, anything. Just heart attacks all of a sudden. Suddenly after the pandemic. So I'm like,
mm,
I'm paranoid from living alone. That's why I stay with people. Like, if I'm getting a heart attack, like somebody would be there
yeah,
to like report.
yeah, scary.
Yeah. Yeah. I, yeah, it passed over me. So, um, well, Jordan, if we can rewind to the slide before that, just want to look at some of these rituals that are involved with cleansing the land when you go into strange places. Um, the Marai, the Maclay Coast, Australia, the Torres, they would do a lot of these. I think it was a lot of like fire rituals and things like that, and also these branch rituals where they would bury the branch in order to cleanse it, and purification rituals with the Bakunas, the Western Africa, and India, where there was head shaving and washing, and this. I don't know if Osik knows anything about the golden yoni ritual, but ultimately the aim is to restore purity. And if we go to slide 367, there's in he talks about the Tartarkan and the Bachelage and the Congo, where strangers would pass through fires or bathe or receive marks, and talking about the enduring the peppers in order to neutralize magic. And I'm thinking about the ways that we were sterilizing things with these groups that went in there. You can go to the next slide, Jordan. Um, Still today, I know people are like just taking cans of Lysol and like wiping down everything, et cetera, et cetera. Like this hypochondriasis that everybody seems to have, and the getting of marks and be like, okay, this one's clean. And then I think probably the best piece of art that came out of the COVID period is this. Have you guys ever seen this compilation of the nurses dancing set to a very
No one was dancing.
slow.
These are fake, but yes, they're funny.
Well, do you think they're all AI generated?
I know no
What do
one
you
was
think they
dancing
are?
at my job. Yeah. Mm-mm. I don't know. But we
It'd
all
be, I'm so,
hysterically laughed about it. We were like, A, we don't take lunch, and B, when do people have time to do this? This is so weird.
yeah. What did you think of, like, what do you think about when you see this? Because it was interesting. I had a
Fake.
bat fly. I had a bat fly into my car in 2020, and I had to get a rabies vaccine. And because it's doled out in like 4 or 5 different shots,
Mhm.
depending on which guidelines you go by. And so I was like going into the hospital around here all the time, and it was pretty empty.
Yep.
It was pretty slow. And I was like,
The only people that were downright full was me, because we're in psych and everybody got naked and got on top of their roofs and waited for the rapture. And I'm not kidding. I don't know why you have to be naked. The clothes will just fall off if the rapture happens. But so the police were bringing in an absorbent amount of patients, and I'm like, this is insane, literally. And these are not people that would normally be there. These are normal, functioning people, scared people, literally to death. So, yeah.
So you weren't seeing a ton of COVID cases, or
No, we had a lot of psychiatric cases. Our hospitals also, we would drive by just out of curiosity, being in the medical field, drive by the little ERs and stuff. They were all empty. I can't say that we
that's
saw a
what
huge, yeah.
that's what I saw. And I compared notes with other friends who found them, like I found themselves in the ER, their kid may have broken their arm, they had to go. And I was just kind of making sure everybody was seeing the same reality I was seeing. And that was the universal report.
And the boats
It was
being sent to New York and all this, that they just stayed empty. And then I had friends that actually contracted to go to New York to like ground zero. Now they were full, but also this was at the very beginning, but people were just dying. I mean, like as soon as they got into the hospital, all of my friends that went, they were like, "Oh yeah, everybody's dropped." That was actually really scary that first week, because they're sending us like emails like, "Oh yeah, everybody's dropping dead," and it's the treatment, not the disease. Like if I can make it through it with one lung completely almost damaged, like to the point of no return, and my other lung doesn't function as good, and horrible asthma my whole life. Like I take as many inhalers as a COPD patient, literally. And was it good? No, it sucked. And I was super sick. But my husband was almost more sick than I was. And he was not like, he's this healthy guy that lifts weights all day, all the time. That's all he does. And so, like, he passed out, and I literally had to like grab his legs and pump, like, lay him down and pump his legs to get him to like get enough blood pressure. I mean, he was scary. I wasn't that as scary as he was, which was weird.
So when I put these pictures up here of, the story that I'm telling here is these primitive practices that we see in all these different cultures have not gone away. They just reinvent themselves. And we need to have somewhat of a detached worldview. When we see them manifest in our reality, we need to be like, oh, it's that thing again that's ultimately driven by these antiquated notions of kingships controlling the entire universe, and the sympathetic magic and taboos that may be applicable to that given situation. But you're also on the inside of it too, right? Like, you being a trained nurse, like, you may look at this stuff and go, this is absolutely necessary in order for us to do proper medicine. So having read this material and me putting that out there, like, how do you juggle that? I mean, what do you think is happening here?
All of the cures that I saw were not done. The whole reason why I was so against it, and I sounded the alarm, believe me, there are still people that hate me because of the discussions I nicely had with them. We were banned from our families. I don't know that those relationships have ever come back 100. All of the people that got those cures got very sick immediately. We didn't get sick till later. later. And, I feel like the cure nowadays is not what has been. They greenlit it past every safety precaution, and there's nothing in any of these things to look at, any safety stuff, any side effects, nothing. I actually refused to give one. I refused to take one. I told them it was against my religion. I was just done with it. I didn't care anymore because it was not done the proper way. Like, as you said, medical standards are such blah, 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 but that's not how this went. And it was not normal. I didn't know at that time what it was, but I knew it wasn't normal. So I was like, no, absolutely not.
Well, I guess the question I'm asking here, and I've been through all these conversations. I get it. And I think your story is very valuable. I guess what I'm trying to say is when we look at it anthropologically and you see like the images that I have here, but you understand the scientific utility of them, the theories that are driving them, right? Like why we were masking, why we are sterilizing. I don't know what the scientific theory, why we're dancing. Perhaps joy makes it go away. I don't know. But how do you feel about this analogy of saying this is a continuation of these other observations that have been made in an anthropological context?
Oh, 100%. I mean, I knew there was something else going on, to your point, like not just medically, right? Because I didn't know why we were masking, because it doesn't work. And the JAMA studies never aligned with what they were doing. So that was my whole issue, was like, hey, wait, I don't care where you stand on this, but like for me, this isn't aligning. So ultimately I knew there was something else, like you said, through the ages that was going on. There had to be. Did I know what it was? I had barely woken up. This was my wake up call. This was the time where Heidi went, maybe I need to figure this out. And that was what happened. And I was a normie with like stupid stuff and Kim Kardashian TV before that.
Well, maybe one could
imagine.
say, yeah, maybe one could say this. Maybe one could say this is that when I make this analogy here, there is like proven good science, right, that ultimately justifies these practices when appropriately called for. But any profession, not just this profession, any profession, like if it was some sort of crisis involving, I don't know, construction work or something like that, that costume can be appropriated in order to perform these rituals.
yeah.
Like it can insert itself into it. Because when I look at this, I'm like, oh, you know what? That sounds a lot like what happened in 2020. Am I then going to go and say like surgeons should never wear masks or whatever when they're like operating on somebody? Like, do I really believe that like sterilization is like completely ineffectual all the time? I'm not willing to make that claim, but perhaps like other things we've talked about, it could be temporarily hijacked for in order to continue a ritual that's been at work since the beginning of time.
Yeah.
And it just happened to manifest in this profession, but it could manifest in other professions as well.
Sure. Yeah, 100%.
I'd like to bring it back to when we're talking about taking the DNA to space, and why might you take DNA to space? Well, why might you tamper with everyone's DNA who cannot see what is going on?
Well, I found it interesting in your little slide stuff and all that it said the things that they were concerned about were hair, nails, and spittle, aka spit. And then this is the same time frame where DNA tests were like hugely popularized. Right before this was the time frame, and what is that? Spit. And I found that, found that interesting.
That is interesting.
You might be into the movie I Origins. I need to rewatch it. I don't know if you've seen it or not, but
I don't think so.
Check it out if and when you have time. I'd love to talk to you about it.
Do a chat about it? Yeah, let's do it. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So let's look at some other taboos here.
Looks like, man, this was...
I knew what I was... I should have known. Ostick knew. Always listen to Ostick. All right. Let's go to slide 368. I mean, I think we can get through these pretty quickly. But I'm happy to talk about them too. But this one's generally about how, air quotes, savages believe eating and drinking are dangerous because the soul may escape through the mouth or to be extracted by an enemy's magic. And we have all these different examples we have the U speaking peoples, the Bataks, the Rarua, but in general, right, this like inspires like the monarch to eat in seclusion, all the different permutations of this, right? And the people can, I think Ostic even mentioned the example of the boy who saw, where was that example? Do you remember which example that was, Ostic? Maybe the Luongo, where I think it was where the king cannot be seen eating, drinking under penalty of death, and a boy saw him eat, and they had this dog like tear him apart, and he's like, he saw me or whatever, right? So we can't possibly have any sort of demonic possession of the king when he's eating. That's why he has to be isolated. I mean, there's other examples. The Dahomey, the king hides behind curtains and handkerchiefs during public drinking. Any other ones jump out to anybody? And maybe how is this relevant in our world?
Like, why do you think it's relevant? Like, do you have any ideas? I only have historical trivia.
I'm down for some historical trivia. I mean, I hadn't thought about its immediate application. I mean, the first thing that came to mind was George. Heidi probably remembers this. Do you remember when Bush Senior like vomited in Japan?
Oh, yes, I do remember.
Do you remember that?
That was so bad.
I don't know if it's a really super relevant, but yeah,
definitely taboo.
I don't know. I mean, is there anywhere where people? I guess people don't like have their photograph when they're eating because it makes them look silly or something. I don't know, but I'm struggling to find a modern application of this.
I mean,
Howard
it's not
was
great.
weird about it. Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
It's unflattering, but I don't think anyone's like believes that the soul is going to jump out of your body or get possessed or something like that while eating. What about the
I have
queen?
heard that in dreams, though, that if you like that there is superstition if you're eating in dreams that that can tamper with the soul. So
what about like the Queen of England? Did she have meals on camera?
I think she did.
Yeah, they always have these. They just showed us a bunch of photos of Trump at the. I forget.
Oh yeah. He was like eating spaghetti. Yeah, he was like wolfing down spaghetti like while King Charles was talking.
Yeah, they're all eating, and then we have the White House Correspondents' Dinner. That's a pretty big deal that they broadcast everywhere. So I don't know. Maybe what's interesting is they're doing the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It makes our politicians and rulers like relatable. Like, ooh, like he likes pizza like me.
Yeah, well, the whole
That's interesting. Joe Biden, he was so fond of ice cream.
Oh yeah, the ice cream. Yeah,
every day ice cream. Where's the new ice cream? I'm such an idiot and schizo mind, so I keep thinking about The Shining, the ice cream, the ice cream. Yeah, things like that. So
well, you know what's interesting about Biden and ice cream is that he decided to quit his presidential run on National Ice Cream Day.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like the food that he's most associated with, and it ultimately is like connected with his, I don't want to say downfall, but the termination of his political career.
I mean,
so maybe there's something there. I feel like
Howard Hughes was obsessed with ice cream as well.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
And then in The Good Place, they've got the frozen yogurt.
Yeah,
because ice cream is better. I mean, I think that's the idea. They're like, oh, they can only have frozen yogurt.
Yeah. Well, I like me some froyo. I like those big buckets. Put some gummy worms in it and stuff like that. But this thing with food, it gets. I think is it section 4. We can skip ahead to it. We're breaking all the rules here tonight. We can go to section 5, taboos on leaving food over. So, like in many cultures, food remnants and dishes are believed to retain a magical connection to the eater through sympathetic magic, allowing sorcerers to harm individuals by manipulating these leftovers. So, there's all these different cultures where people would have to like burn their rubbish in their food so a sorcerer couldn't get a hold of it. And then if the sorcerer did get a hold of it, you'd have to buy your soul back or something, or make sure he didn't do the charm on you so you didn't get ill.
It's a lot of
I mean, it's
paranoia.
a practical concern, actually. If someone
Spit.
might
Yeah.
poison their food. So it's
They did
like,
have tasters. Yeah, they did have tasters.
That's a little different though. This is like after you eat. This is like you're done with your meal, you hand it off to somebody, and they've got the scraps.
The spit, though. The spit.
Yeah.
so I mean, it happens here a lot, actually. So people, they call it black magic here. So
Oh, tell us more.
I mean, I think it's silly, but you see it on roads. I mean, especially in this state, it happens. Like, suppose if a house has been hit with some unfortunate events, they do this kind of, you know, um, a fire. They lit a fire and they do prayers around it, and then what they do is like they try to capture the evil spirit in a earthen pot, and then they place that earthen pot on the highway. So what they think is like if a car hits that pot, the evil spirit will transfer to that car, the guy who's driving the car. So these kind of
Wow.
super, it's like crazy. So I have to like drive and avoid these earthen pots. They keep it in the middle of the road. So they're like they want it gone. So like unless somebody hits it, so it's like a game of tag in a way. Yeah, you're it. It's like that's what they're doing. I mean, also other things about food is like with the caste system, people are not allowed to eat food together in India. So like it was more like spelled out in the past, but like now it's people don't have this caste distinction anymore. It's basically about hygiene. But like back in the day, people were like, even if your shadow, like if you're a high caste member, and like you cannot step into the shadow cast by a low caste person. So like they considered like they have been uh, like made impure, so they have to like cleanse themselves, do these rituals. So there's a lot of weird things that comes with like consolidating power in such a small knit community, and like trying to push people. I think it's a bully ring. Like people, they're bullying people and then internalizing these things in them the
There is
moment they're born.
like a good consequence though from this like concern about food scraps being manipulated and therefore being able to manipulate the individual. Fraser notes that this actually encourages like socialized eating, that amongst people, like it's like when we decide to gather together and eat, essentially when we all eat the same food, we're kind of entering into a pact to not like cast black magic on one another. It's kind of like we're all eating the same food, and if you can't take that scrap because it'll also be in you. So if you try to do magic on me, you'll be doing it on yourself. So it's actually like builds society in a way because of I guess an enlightened egoism.
Then we're back to the Alfalfa Club having dinner once a year.
Yeah, maybe that's where it came from.
No, it didn't, but it's interesting. It's an interesting correlation for sure. These big dinners too, other dinners.
Yeah. Is it? Yeah. Jordan, did you want to weigh in on this?
I'm good.
Yeah. I'm running out of I'm running out of like modern day applications of it. If I hadn't been so focused on space, maybe I would have done a better job. If we go back to we can look at 370 and 371. I think we can kind of call it a day there. These other two sections from Taboo Acts. We had the taboo on showing the face. So what is going on there? I think it's kind of connected to the eating and the having the mouth open. Do you remember what they said here? I think I have my
Yes.
notes a little jumbled up.
I mean, they covered their faces with bandages and mouths, so they can only see their eyes. Eyes are the only thing
That's
that can
right.
be seen. Yeah, that was what being talked about. Another thing about food I remember in Eyes Wide Shut. So there's this guy, Sandro Savost, he drinks from her glass in order to, seduce her or something. It's written in the book of Ovid that you should, if you
Yeah.
want to like seduce a lady, so you drink from her glass, things like that.
Right. Right. That's a good example.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the covering of the face prevents the spiritual intrusion, often done with eating. That's why these things are connected together. Thank you for clarifying that, Ostic. I'm sorry I spaced there for a second. And then we have this one on quitting the house, right? So because of all the different dangers out there, these kings were forbidden from leaving their palaces, or their subjects were prohibited from seeing them, therefore reinforcing the isolation. So it really sounds like it was a pretty unpleasant thing. I mean, it's just kind of like a layer. We learned about this last time, or maybe 2 or 3 times ago, where the kings had to look in a certain direction and couldn't move, and all these other things. But like, we're kind of getting a sense of just how many responsibilities, how onerous the whole thing was. You think I sometimes, I guess I think about, like, wouldn't it be great to go back in time and be like worshipped as like a god man or something? But no, this wouldn't be cool.
Howard Hughes didn't meet most of his staff members, even very important people to him. Most of them never met him, and it was all just taken care of through specific people that were allowed. I think he read this book, and I think they made him think he was, a king. I don't know. Something's up there. Too many coincidences.
I have to look into that. All my Howard Hughes knowledge is coming from you lately, Heidi.
I'll send you some episodes.
Yeah.
They're fun.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel pretty satisfied talking about the chapter, the stuff that we covered today. I'm getting pretty hungry, and I gotta make some dinner. Does anyone want to close this out?
It was a good one. It was in the conspiracy community. This is called a real barn burner.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll be accepted by the wider conspiracy community, but
it's fun. It's good to stay on the outskirts as well. But yeah, you're safe.
All right. Well, thanks for joining me today, guys. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
It was fun.
Good.